What's up, guys? So one of the books I was really excited about that came out in 2024 was this book. It was The Waters of Mnemosyne, Ancient Greek Religion for Modern Pagans by Gwendolyn Reece. And so, like I said, I was super excited about this book coming out, published by Llewellyn. And I got it, I read it, and I'm going to tell you what I think about it. So, without spoiling anything, here we go.
Great muses will rise and sing praises of the gods.
So yeah, so I really wanted to get into this book. So Waters of Mnemosyne, it is Gwendolyn Reece, and it is, here it is. So this is the cover of it, just so you can see. So before I give you my review of it, let's read what it says on the back that this book's about, like we always do. So build a deep and contemporary practice rooted in ancient Greek traditions. So presenting more than 70 exercises, rites, path workings, and prayers, Gwendolyn Reece ingeniously revitalizes fundamental concepts from ancient Greece for today's practitioner. Whether you're a pagan or simply drawn to the Greek pantheon, Reece helps you build a relationship with the theoi, Olympians, Titans, and other deities, and create a truly vibrant spirituality. So the Waters of Mnemosyne provides conceptual, theological, and philosophical information that enriches your practice and worldview, discovers rites of passage, healing traditions, and sacred spaces, both personal and public. Explore Greek civic duties, heroes, magic, and the mysteries. With its essential strategies for spiritual development, this book will be the definitive text for Hellenic-inspired practice for years to come. Okay. So as you can probably tell by my attitude so far in this video, I was not a fan of this book. It is something else. You know, they usually say that for modern pagans, that you mean that in the concept of polytheists, you know. But this, you couldn't be any more accurate. So this is basically Hellenic polytheism, or the Greek gods put into an American pagan, a Western pagan / Wiccan point of view. So it has a lot of things that I disagree with, and I'll show you some of the stuff that I disagreed with that made it really hard to read. So I will talk about what I did not like, what I did like, and show you some stuff that I'd recommend instead, sadly. So I said this is kind of disappointing because it was a slog. It was a slog. Only 40 pages in. I thought the first couple of chapters were pretty good, but then I got to about page 60 and it was a struggle because I was just respecting someone's point of view, like, okay. And then I got to where I hardly didn't even want to keep reading, and that's not a good thing when it comes to a book. So let's look at some of the stuff I did not like. So not far into this book, she talks about unverified personal gnosis, and I, reading this at the time, had no clue that this was a prophecy of things to come, I guess you could say. That it was going to be a book really relying on mixing her own UPG into this book. I mean, it talks about unverified personal gnosis down here and what that is. So it says that unverified personal gnosis is sometimes looked down on because it doesn't originate from lore. While important to check oneself for delusions, testing if what is perceived is in alignment with the lore, UPG shouldn't be automatically rejected. It says the Athenians believed Phidippides and his experience became the lore. A new cult of Pan was founded. Every traditional cult or practice begins with someone's UPG. If the gods are real, and I believe they are, why would this change? Use discernment, but be open. So I just read that as just a part of the book. I didn't realize that this was kind of a warning of what was to come when it comes to this book. Yeah, this book is just littered with UPG that you have to take her word for, which is one thing that always turns me off. Like right here on page 38, she said that in vision, talking about Zeus, he told me all humanity has lightning sparks in our blood, and this power can be awakened. The lightning or spiritual electricity is a type of fire energy that is conduit for both consciousness and life force and links the planes together. And she talks about the astral planes. In other words, more modern Wiccan and Western pagan teachings rather than traditional Hellenic polytheist stuff. In another example on page 30, on 62, page 62, it says Apollo or Apollon is the only of the gods who periodically becomes temporarily mortal without really giving up his immortality. This happened a couple of times in mythology, and I believe his son Orpheus is one of his avatars. In other words, Apollo came in human form and was Orpheus. So according to this book, Apollo and Orpheus are the same person. And on page 68, talk about Dionysus, it says that Dionysus, as the son of Zeus, had certain godly powers, but was initially immortal. You know, that's the whole thing about Dionysus and Dionysus. You know, he always fought to say he was the son of Zeus and he is a god. And it says right here, according to this author, that he was initially mortal. So another thing I was like, whoa, okay. Even a quick Google search tells you it knows better than that statement. And on page 41 again, talking about how Hera told her something. So Hera told me she is distressed by the way our society is focused upon productivity to the point where we utterly devalue care, which makes our society sick. So it's a red flag also to me when people start telling and writing in books of what the gods have told them, because you have people that are brand new into looking into spirituality, into this particular spirituality, and they can read this and they'll believe what you say. Someone will believe that. And like she wrote in the UPG section, it's okay to have UPG, but you have to be able to discern it. And I am not following or picking up what this person is putting down. So the moral of the story is that if you're looking for a book that is more traditional Hellenic polytheism, I would not recommend The Waters of Mnemosyne, because it's definitely for the modern pagan and the Western Wiccans and the ones that believe more in that line of thinking about astral projection and magic and all that stuff. So I was a little disappointed, to say the least, about this book, where it got to a point where I agreed with some stuff, and then I thought some stuff was interesting, and then it got to the point, as I said, where it got hard to read, just because nothing was, I was getting aware we were agreeing with each other, we'll just say. So what did I think was interesting, and that was a good point I agreed with in the book? I thought, that's an interesting take, was the concept of fate. How fate is not necessarily set in stone, but it is based on the choices we make. That you look at, she gives the example of Achilles, how he wasn't born just to necessarily die in the Trojan War. Remember, he was given the choice of he could go to the war and be famous and die, or he could live a quiet life and no one would know who he was. So that was an interesting point I thought that I could take away from this book. If there's anything I could take away positive that gave me, I knew something to think about in this, it was the idea on fate. I thought that was a good point, because we always talk about, and that's always a philosophical thing, are we before we're even born, is this our destiny to do that? And she talks about how it is when we were presented with choices, it's the path we take on these choices that determines the outcome of where it's going. And I thought that was an interesting point. So if you're looking for something that is more traditional Hellenic polytheist and not so much Wiccan or modern pagan influenced, I would give you some of these choices. So this author kind of has a bad reputation now, but if you can get your hands on this book, this is a better book that was put out by Llewellyn that I would recommend more because the content is more to how I've always seen things, and that is Mnemosyne, Practicing Greek Polytheism Today. Again, this is a Llewellyn publication. So what does that mean? That means that more than likely you may be able to find this in your local bookstore. If you don't go online, you can probably find this, because these two would be the ones that you could probably find if it's a Llewellyn book. So between these two, I would definitely recommend this one if you want more of a traditional Hellenic polytheist view and teaching that doesn't rely on all this UPG about what Zeus told me and what Era told me and all that, and you want more about the practice and the traditional view, I would definitely recommend this one for sure. If you want to go online on Amazon and order books, what books would I recommend? This is the book that really was an inspiration to me years ago, that I still think is a classic. Hellenic Polytheism, Household Worship by Labris. I think that this is a great book. Like I said, this is a fantastic book, and I've done a review. I won't review this book on this video. You can look at my review of it where I show you what's inside of it, and I think this is a great book. It talks about traditional worship, talks about offerings, and everything that you want to get started. This is a good one right here. And then, of course, I will mention one of my acquaintances will say that we know each other, and a lot of people that start on Hellenic polytheism, they always go for this book, and I recommend it as well. I think this is a great book too that is better than the one published by Llewellyn, and that is this one by Chris Aldridge. It is Hellenic Polytheism, a personal guide for ancient Greek practitioners. So this one is a great book to get started too when you go on Amazon, and it has a great reputation behind it because it is a good source for those that don't have access to Greek books on Hellenic polytheism because they're all written in Greek. If you want an English translation book that teaches you how to practice Hellenic polytheism, then Chris's book is really good. So, and there you go. Definitely, I would recommend that one as well. Now, if you're looking for something that is definitely from Greece and has a high priest from Greece, his take on the gods is also interesting. So it's not just that this book just had stuff I disagreed with. It was just like, there was just so much that was not, I don't want to say anymore, but if you're looking for a different take of view, maybe you wanted to look at different views on Hellenic polytheism that are more in the traditional line and don't stray so far that it's like red flags, I would recommend George Lizos's book, Secrets of Greek Mysticism. So in here, you get your mystic view. But the difference is that the Waters of Mnemosyne is more of your Western mysticism, your Wiccan influences, and this is not. So it also has an interesting take on the gods that is not blasphemous, for lack of a better term, and it's just better. It's just a better book. So, and it's definitely a different view than your traditional, what would say would be a traditional view. And another book I would recommend is The Secrets of Hellenic Polytheism about Pleithon. I've done a review on this one as well. It is. It's a Llewellyn publication. Another Llewellyn I would recommend over The Waters of Mnemosyne. And this is another one where Pleithon was, in his day, trying to bring back the worship of the gods when Christianity was the thing. And it was even a more modern time than even the ancient days. And I did a review of this book. Again, I won't review it right now, but you can look at my review of this. And you can see I talk about his worship and how he worshiped the gods in his approach on the gods. And so, yeah, another book I would recommend if you want another alternate take to Hellenic polytheism would be this and this. And last but not least, I want to mention the one that changed my life. The one that I would say I am a follower of when it comes to the view on the gods, and that is Sallustius and Sallust on the gods and the world. So this one can be found online for free. It is out there. And I recommend, if you want to check out Sallustius on the gods in the world, that you can actually Google it and look at modern translations and modern English to make it a little easier to digest. Because a lot of people have the way it's written can be a little confusing for people, but I definitely recommend this. And if you want to know my worldview on the gods, I always go back to Sallustius, and you get more in my view. So this, compared to the new works, are apples and oranges. So all of these books and more I have read, so you can't say that I haven't read up on these books. And so I was just, needless to say, a little disappointed. And it has great reviews. You go on Amazon, it has great reviews on this book. And I think a lot of it is people that are new, and it was a new book that came out and they got into it and they're like, wow, this is really informative. And it could be their first book. I don't know. I don't want to say that's it, but like I said, for me, it just didn't gel. It wasn't something that I would recommend, and it could speak to you, but it was definitely not speaking to me. We'll just say that. And you know that I rarely do reviews that I would call negative. But maybe I'll pick it up in a few years and I'll give it a second chance. But some of the stuff just pointed out red flags to me that it showed you. And when people start talking about UPG, you gotta discern but be open. Like I said, at the time I didn't know that that was kind of a signal of what the book was going to be, because she talks about, as I've said, talks about how she goes into meditations and Zeus tells her this and Era tells her this, and back and forth on that kind of stuff. And you have to believe what they say that before you can, go any further. And I don't know, that kind of stuff I'm not into. Anyway, guys, there it is. My review of The Waters of Mnemosyne. Kind of taken aback by my thoughts on it. I know I was. And I will, talk to you later. Talk to you later, guys. Bye.